Hello, this is Beyond the Dollar with Betty, and today I want to talk about something that I've been getting lately and kind of how that's been rolling out in my life. And normally I would talk about, spiritual things and, prophetic words and stuff like that on my Through the Dollar website, which is dedicated to all of the dreams and visions and all that kind of thing. This is a little bit different. And I thought, you know what? I really felt like this was the place it needed to go. And I was going to just sit down and write a blog post on it. And I thought, no, you know what? I really want to talk about it. And what I've been getting is similar to a word that I got several years ago. And I had gotten this word back in 2009 about going on some kind of like an expedition and, it was really difficult at the time for me to kind of wrap my brain around what the Lord was saying. But the Lord was basically communicating to me, you're getting ready to go into a new season and it's going to be a journey. It's going to be like an expedition with all of its retinue, conveyances, and equipment. And when I got that word back in 2009, there was imagery that went with it. So there was a picture that I got. I mean, you could call it a vision. I don't even know that it was really that clear at the time. It was just the sense of something, as if I could see like this wagon train back in the old days, wagon train going from like the Midwest to the West Coast. And I knew this was going to be kind of a long and arduous journey. And it was going to be necessary, just like it would have been at that point, to pack up everything you possibly would need to go on this journey, because there isn't going to be an opportunity to stop and get supplies necessarily along the way. So it would behoove you to pack up the best you can right now. And the interesting thing was, I got that word in 2009. Well, it was probably I'd say about a year and a half later when that actually started to happen. And you know how if you're like me, when you're getting a prophetic word or you're getting a sense of something from the Lord, He's putting an impression on your heart, or however the Lord communicates to you personally. Sometimes He speaks to us through circumstances. Sometimes it's that still small voice. Sometimes it's through visions or dreams or whatever. And we each have our own way of hearing the Lord and coming to a place of understanding. Sometimes that can take a while. And what I have found often is that I might be getting something, but I'm not really aware that what I'm sensing or what I'm picking up on, or whatever language you want to put to it, I'm not always, or let me rephrase that, things don't always come in a way where it's like a billboard sign from heaven, okay, where I can see it, I know what I'm seeing, I know what I'm hearing. Sometimes it's kind of vague. And this was one of those things. And then as time went by, I definitely got a word from the Lord about, this is what's going to happen. I'm taking you on this new expedition with all of its retinue, conveyances, and equipment. And like I said, and then about a year and a half or so later, I began to get stockpiled, because the Lord said to me, you're going to go on you're going into this particular season, and there are things you're going to need. First of all, it's going to need certain retinue, and retinue is people. Those are the people that are put around you and who kind of walk with you, not just servicing you, okay, but the people that you're in community with, let's say. And retinue can often be those that do bring some type of service. Okay. I don't want to get too bogged down with terminology right now. Retinue is people. Conveyances are just simply the means by which you get from one place to another. So if you're talking about literal earthly conveyances, that might be trains and planes and automobiles. That might be, cars and buses and trucks and whatever, trailers and bicycles and whatever means, and conveyances in the spirit can be how the spirit is moving, how you're being moved and shifted from one place to another. You're being conveyed. So there's retinue, conveyances, and then there's equipment. There's certain equipment that you need to go forward into, that you're going to need specific for that particular journey. So, I don't know how many people have ever watched an old Western where you see a wagon train, and often what you see along the way is when they get to a place where the road gets rugged, they start leaving some of the things they brought with behind, because they were trying to bring their old life into their new life, and their new life has different needs. And we think we know the equipment we're going to need, the stuff we want to bring along with us. But if you want to climb that mountain, if you want to get over those hills, if you want to be able to ford that river, grandma's, your old grandfather clock isn't going to make the journey. There's certain things that, the heavy equipment, the heavy things from the past can't go with us. And I just see that's a metaphorical thing for, the other things of our past can't always go on the next journey that's in front of us. And the interesting thing, the reason I bring this up is not because of something the Lord said to me in 2009. I went on that particular expedition, and it was a journey. It was a journey and a half. I never want to go on that journey again, but it was great. It was one of those Dickens things. It was the best of times and the worst of times. It was, it was one of those all things work together for good kind of times. It was wonderful because it was a journey I went on with the Lord. It was a strong learning curve, and it was as much a blessing, I should say, it was as much a hardship as it was a blessing. It was an extreme hardship, but it was also an extreme blessing. And it would be impossible for me to convey everything that was embodied in that particular journey. But the interesting thing is that I've been getting that phrase, retinue, conveyances, and equipment. I've been getting that again for like the last couple of months. And actually, I was looking back in some of the words that I've posted and things like that, and there was a word that I got back at Rosh Hashanah. It was at the beginning of the Pei decade. So the Hebraic year 5780 began in, I want to say, September of 2019. And there was this whole word that I won't go into in this particular podcast, but it's available on both through the Dalet and beyond the Dalet. And I want to say it's a word I posted in like October of 2019, possibly, and I'll probably repost it freshly on both sites, because I went back this morning and I was revisiting that word, because it really was the word the Lord had given me at that time was, it was in connection with Amos 9:13, which had to do about the blessing of the Lord coming and overtaking you, so much that your head was going to swim and all that. And the Lord had said to me at the time when I got it, he said, this word, and there was a particular setting, but he said, this word is a word for this year. And I'm like, okay, well, I went into And I'm just being honest with you. I went into 5780 and that's not what happened. So I get this word and I'm like, all right, I don't, and I mean, I'm just being honest with you. When I got to Rosh Hashanah 5781, and I'm like, now I know enough to know that often when the Lord communicates something, it's not always the way it is in our head and according to our human understanding. And if we wait on the Lord, He'll broaden our understanding and He'll give us more insight into the things that He has said. And so I get to the beginning, 5781, and I go back to the Lord and I go, okay, what about this? Because this word, if I look at it literally, which is often the way that I do, I start out there, I go, these are the literal words you said to me. This didn't literally come to pass. So was this a false word? Did I get it wrong? Is my application wrong? Show me where my error is. And the Lord came back to me and said, that wasn't an error. You just didn't see the blessing that was overtaking you. And I went, okay, you have to show me that part because no, I don't see that. And He said, that's the problem. You can't always see what is a blessing to you. Okay. I said, well, all right, well then open my eyes and give me understanding. Broaden my, open my understanding so that I can see the blessing of the Lord. Those blessings that are, sometimes we call them hidden blessings. Is this a blessing in disguise? Well, as I look back over the past year and a half, whatever it's been now, I have to go, wow, it really was a tremendous blessing, and it did overtake me. And I have to tell you, my head was swimming, and it really was amazing. But hold on for 1 second. Okay. I want to read the passage of scripture that the Lord gave me, and it happens to be the wording that is in the Message Bible for Amos 9. And it's Amos 9:13 to 15, I believe. And here's how it goes. Things are going to happen so fast, your head will swim. One thing fast on the heels of another. You won't be able to keep up. Everything will be happening at once. And everywhere you look, blessings. Blessings like wine pouring off the mountains and hills. I'll make everything right again for my people Israel. And then, this is, like I said, this is Amos 9. And it goes on from there, and it says, they will rebuild ruined cities, they'll plant vineyards and drink good wine, they'll work their gardens and eat fresh vegetables, and I'll plant them. I'll plant them on their own land. They will never be uprooted for the land I've given them. God, your God, says so. Now, here's the thing. Now, I've read more today than was a part of the word that the Lord gave me, the prophetic word that the Lord gave me for 5780. Nevertheless. So, why bring it up now? Well, because what did happen for me at the front end of this, as soon as we get into 5780, which like I said, that was like October, September, the end of September, beginning of October of 2019. Everything started to shift in my life. Now, I had no idea that there was going to be a major shift for me later that year, which came for me about Passover. By Passover, which is begins Nisan 14. In this case, it was April of 2020. I got hurled from Illinois to Virginia. And things were happening so fast, my head was swimming. I mean, but I didn't see it. I didn't see what God was doing in my life necessarily as a blessing overtaking me. They were just circumstances that were making my head swim. They were happening so fast. And sometimes when things happen quickly, we don't always have time. And we don't know, it's not just a timepiece, but, and I'll see if maybe I can come up with the right language I want to wrap around this, but sometimes when things are happening so quickly, you either have time to process what's going on or you have time to live what's going on. And there's times when you can't do both at the same time. So if you're like me, I think I'm somebody who can think on their feet. I mean, I usually can kind of process as I go. I'm usually not thrown off by circumstances that much, even things that are happening very quickly. And I'd say I think I do pretty well in a crisis. It's taken me a lifetime to get here, but I think I do pretty well. I mean, I don't get normally what I find will happen for me is if I surrender to the Lord in the midst of a situation, or as I'm when I'm faced with a crisis, or I'm faced with difficult circumstances, my initial response, my first response is to go to the Lord. And I get on my face before God and I find, where are you in the midst of this? And how do you want me to respond? Where do you want me? What's my place? What's my role in the midst of this? So last year, like I said, at Passover, right before Passover 2020, like I said, everything in my life all of a sudden changed. And the reason it changed is because my father, who lived in Virginia, was just recently put in the hospital. And he was 86 years old, went into the hospital. This was right at the front end of COVID. He didn't have COVID, but he had a fall. And like 2 days prior to this fall he had gone to see an oncologist, and they had found a growth. They hadn't even gotten the results back they did a small biopsy. They didn't have the results back from the test yet, and he lost his balance in the bathroom and fell, and his doctor suggested that he go down to the emergency room just to make sure, because of his age and all that, they wanted to just make sure he was okay. Well, they ended up keeping him, and he was supposed to be there for, a couple of days just to check him out, make sure he's okay. And while he was there, they were going to run a battery of tests on him to get to the bottom of what's going on with this growth they found. So the end of the story is I had to come down to Virginia to stay with my stepmother, who was 95 years old, or 94 at the time. And because my dad was supposed to be in the hospital for a couple of weeks, she needed somebody to be here with her. And so I'm like, I knew the Lord was telling me, he's like, Betty, I want you to go. I want you to be the one. Fly down there, get down there, and you're going to be there for a little while. So pack for the trip. And I'm like, well, I don't even know what I'm going to need. I don't know how long I'm going to be there. My dad's only supposed to be in the hospital for a couple of weeks. But this is the front end of COVID. And traveling was real dicey at that point. So you had no idea, what do I need? What am I? And so I realized I was starting to strive over it. Said, okay, stop. Lord, what do you want me to take with me? How should I pack? And this is what the Lord said to me. He said, Betty, pack as if you were going to be staying for a few months. Well, that hit me like a punch in the gut, because I'm like, I can't be gone for a couple of months. He's like, that's not what I said. I said, pack as if you were going for a couple of months. Well, if I'm going to be somewhere for a couple of months, I'm going to take different things with me than if I were only going for a couple of days. You are going to pack differently, and I did. So I pack as if I'm going to be there till June, or July or whatever. And some of the stuff I actually had shipped from Illinois to Virginia. And just so I didn't have to take it on the plane, because I'm like, well, if I'm going to be there for a couple of months, there's things I'm going to need while I'm down there. I'm not going to, they live in the country in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around there. So I might as well bring stuff to work on while I'm there. So, I ship all this stuff down there, everything I think I'm going to need. And I get on a plane and I go to Virginia. Well, I'm not there for 2 days, and we get a call from the doctor saying, I'm sending your dad home. And I'm like, wait, what? Okay, now here's the thing. I knew the Lord sent me there. I knew the Lord what he had said to me was very clear. Pack as if you're going to be there for a couple of months. Now, that communicates a couple of things to me, but it also doesn't communicate certain things to me. One thing is, when the Lord says a couple of months, to me that translates as temporary, but in kind of a suspended, extended time, but not a permanent move. So I didn't pack up everything I own and have it shipped to Virginia. If I had known what the situation was going to be once I got down here, I would have packed very differently. Because here's what ended up happening. I wasn't here for just a couple of months. I've been here to date. I've been here a year. But the Lord knew how I would interpret pack as if you're going to be there for a couple of months. He knew what my thinking was. He knew how I would respond and how I would react to that word. And I did what I felt was necessary for that. Okay. Having said all that, my dad comes home on hospice 3 days after I arrived. I got here on a Friday, late Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. My cab pulls up in the driveway. By 9 o'clock Monday morning, I get a phone call from the doctor saying, we're sending your dad home. He's coming home on hospice. And talk about my head spinning. My head was absolutely spinning. Now, are these the circumstances that were coming hard and fast? Absolutely. Was this a blessing? No, not really. That's not the way I saw it. My dad comes home on hospice, and here's the thing, that this is what the doctor said to me that day on the phone. He said, Miss Hall, because we're in the South, nobody calls you by your first name. Bless their little hearts. He says, we're sending your dad home on hospice, and we are numbering his days in days to weeks, not months. He says his longevity, it's like his lifespan, he's at the end, and it isn't going to be long. And my dad was home within a couple of hours. They sent him home on hospice. We had to go and pick him up, and so we drive, and we really are. We're in central Virginia, and where we're at in the central part of Virginia, we're about 45 minutes outside of Charlottesville, so the hospital is in Charlottesville. We have to drive to the hospital to go pick Dad up and bring him home. And so literally we get off the phone with him. They're like, well, we'll have him ready. He'll be ready in an hour. Well, then we need to leave. So it was happening so fast that there wasn't really time to think or process all of that in the moment, all I could do was just live it in the moment. It was happening too fast to process it and live in it. So we get in the car, we drive over and go pick up my dad, we bring him home. Within the next hour after bringing him home, the woman from hospice is there. She's walking us through everything. My head is spinning because now I haven't seen my dad. Now, I've talked to him, 3 times a week on the phone. So I talk to my dad about every other day. But I hadn't seen him in a number of years. And here I'm faced with the first time I get to see my dad again. He's dying. And his features are very much altered. And I'm looking at someone. I have to now process what I'm seeing and what I'm walking out. And it wasn't easy. Because I love my dad. And my dad could be a difficult man, as many fathers can be. But that didn't take away from the fact that I love my father. And here I am having to walk through this now as the one in charge, because there isn't anybody else to make decisions. There isn't anybody else there to walk through this. It's me. Now I have siblings, but I was the one, as my brother politely puts it, your boots on the ground. Gotta love brothers. You're in this. You are boots on the ground, sis. You're the one who has to make all these decisions in the moment. Thank you. I love you. Get your boots down here. But he was right. I'm boots on the ground, and I'm like, I'm the one who was here in the moment and walking this out, and it happened so fast. So he comes home from the hospital, and he isn't home for a full month. I want to say it was like April 13th when he got home from the hospital, and it was May 8th when he passed. So it's been almost exactly a year. And, and I'll be honest with you, my head's kind of been swimming ever since, because he comes home, and if you've ever had to deal with someone who's on hospice, they kind of degrade by degrees, and you can kind of judge where they're at and how much time they have left based on the symptoms and what you're seeing. And, the first week my dad was home was challenging because he was still able to get up, and there was just a lot of physical need, so, I'm over 60 years old, I'm not a spring chicken here, and not in the best of physical strength, to be able to do some of this stuff. My dad's a big guy, so it was a challenge, very much a challenge, and I was meeting myself coming and going. That first week was just an insane time of just trying to come to terms with the fact that I'm now, I really am going to be here for a while. At that time I'm thinking, okay, well, who knew? I mean, we didn't know my dad was dying. We just knew there was a possibility that it was a cancer. We didn't know yet. My dad was a really healthy guy. So there was no reason to think that he was at this point of death. We knew something was up, but we didn't know what. So I was glad to be here so that I could, firsthand, I can get the information and I can find out what's going on and I can be a part of the process and all that. But at the same time, like I said, my head was swimming, and I wasn't getting the connection between that kind of my head was swimming and the Amos 9:11, 9:13, things are going to happen so fast your head is going to swim. And I wasn't necessarily putting those pieces together because at that point I couldn't have told you that there was blessing that was going to come to me as a result. Or I should say, not necessarily as a result of those circumstances, but that the Lord was bringing blessing in. Because what ended up happening, like I said, is my dad passed away, and then here's my stepmother, who at the time was 94, her going on 95, who was heavily dependent upon my father, and used to life being a certain way. You know, they had been married for over 50 years, and they had a very particular routine, they had a very particular life, and they did 99% of what they did together. You know, they were almost always together. And my stepmother was very dependent upon my dad socially and emotionally, and in a lot of ways, my dad kept her propped up. You know, so he was her strength, and he's the one who led their household. So I mean, he took care of everything. You know, there was very little that she actually did anymore. And it wasn't that she wasn't necessarily capable. My dad was just used to being in charge. He was the one who was used to taking care of everything. And as they got older, and her being nearly 10 years older than my dad, you know, she was further along. They always expected her to go first. And so she was sitting there just dumbfounded and beside herself because she could not wrap her brain around the fact that my dad was going. And then, you know, and that was really hard for her because my dad never told her bad news. So it was bad news. He just kept it from her. He thought he was protecting her. So he wasn't evidently going to say anything to her until he knew for sure what was happening. Well, that got left up to me. So here I am, you know, in the situation. I have not only not seen my dad in several years, I hadn't seen her either. And so her and I are now having to kind of navigate being in proximity to each other for the first time in a while. And it's like, you know, when you go visit your folks, you know, especially as they get older, you want to spend more time with them. And it's kind of a weird thing because you have your own life and they have theirs. But when these kind of things begin to happen, it has a tendency to change the dynamic. And it did, very much so. Because, again, my response in the midst of things is, Lord, what's my position? How do you want me to walk this out? You lead me and guide me, and I will do whatever it is you want me to do. He sent me down here for a reason. And I knew that at the same time, it was really difficult to be here. You know, as much as I love my folks, it was really, really hard to be here for that amount of time because we never had the kind of relationship where we were friends and buddies and hung out together. Now with my birth mother, with my natural mother, I had that kind of relationship. Her and I could spend hours, days, weeks, months, years. I mean, we could spend time together and, you know, never run out of things to talk about. And my mom and I were more on par with things with the Lord, and we'd sit around and we'd talk about God and you know, and again, you know, she's your mom, so you always have this I love you, I hate you at times. You know, it just goes with the relationship. You know, there's always times when you go, okay, I need my space now. But with my stepmother, I never had that. I didn't grow up in their house. I grew up in my mother's home, and I lived with them for about 2 years when I was in high school, and my last 2 years in high school I spent at my dad's. And other than that, I didn't have much of a relationship with her. And that's just the way it was. So without picking that whole thing apart, that's just the way it is. So this is really, here I am, like I said, I'm 61 years old at the time, and I'm having to face developing some kind of rapport with her. I mean, we had a very superficial relationship, but now I'm faced with having to be with her every single day and trying to navigate this relationship that's never really had a lot of substance to it. And my stepmom, without going too much into it, is she has some disabilities. Let's say she's challenged, and she has some mental challenges, and she has some emotional challenges. So she's not only an extreme introvert, it's that's kind of coupled with the fact that she has a social deficiency. Okay, I don't know what terms, I don't know what clinical terms you might put to it, but she has an inability to engage with other people. So she's not necessarily antisocial as much as she has an inability. She doesn't have the capacity for it. She doesn't know how. It's not just awkward for her. There's a gap for her, and she doesn't have that ability to be social on multiple levels or whatever. I mean, so for her to engage with people has been very, very difficult for her whole life. So it isn't just about me individually. It's a condition that she has, and of course never treated. She's also she has kind of a compulsive personality, so a little OCD, so she's a little bit obsessive compulsive, and she's also had a little bit of a learning disability, not severe, but she's always been challenged in some ways. So like I said, heavily dependent on my dad, and now she has to shift that dependency, because she does, at 94 years old, she's not going to gain new skills. Okay, she has to learn how to live differently, and that's not easy to do at any age. So I'm now in this situation going, God, what do we do? And I knew, as I'm praying through this, Lord, what do we do with my stepmother? How do we handle this now? I mean, because my thought is, okay, well, God said pack for a couple of months. Well, what do we do? My dad's gone now. It's like now we have to figure out what to do with her. What are we going to do with her? And I'm praying this through, and I'm like, well, ideally, it would be great if she could stay in her home, because if you take her out of her home, it would kill her. I mean, it just would be too much for her. For her to handle hard and fast would have killed her. Her handling my dad's passing was all she could handle, and she could barely handle that. She was gutted, and it was really, really hard. So when I'm looking at this situation and I'm trying to find out, God, where are you? And what do you want me to do? And I'm going nuts on this end. And, because if you've ever lived with someone who's OCD, they're only OCD, they're only compulsive and obsessive over the things they're compulsive and obsessive over. So there are certain things, and it can make living with them very, very challenging. And, and it takes a special kind of patience and a special kind of grace and an incredible amount of love to be able to have what I don't have the capacity. I think that's a better way to put it is, I tend to be more on the impatient side. That's just a part of it's, and God has been working on me over the years. But I am a very empathic person. So when I know someone is going through something difficult, when I know that someone's facing all they can handle, I am not going to come in and throw more at them. My personality is, all right, I know I have someone I can go to. I have the Lord who will give me the grace and will undergird me with his strength and will surround me with his protection and his love and his grace and his abundant loving kindness and his goodness and all those things. He will come in and hold me so that I can hold you, so that I can lift her up, so that I can do whatever I need to do. And I got to tell you, there were days when I'd fall into bed at night pulling my hair out because I just didn't know how this was going to work, because what was happening in the midst of this is she's having a reaction to my being here because she never could handle someone else, even us. She could never handle someone else in her home. And everything had to be a certain way. And if you bothered that, if you actually used something, or if you touched something, or if you moved something, or if something wasn't done according to that obsessive compulsive disorder, she couldn't handle it and she would act out. And so in the very beginning, when I first got here and her trying to get used to my being here, it was nearly impossible for her. So because it was impossible for her, she was making it impossible for me. And it was insane for those first few months. And there was a lot going on spiritually, because my dad and my stepmother were never really, they weren't walking with the Lord. I'll just put it that way. So, these weren't people I could sit and talk to God about. We didn't have our God conversations and all that. It was very different dynamic with them. And, so here's me. I'm coming in with not only just everything I represent to them as the daughter who left their house and didn't live the life they wanted me to live. So there's that. But I'm also carrying the presence of the Lord with me. And I know that. When we go into a situation, we're not just bringing who we are, we're bringing the Lord with us. If that same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he dwells in you. And you are a carrier. You are the tabernacle of the living God. So when you walk in somewhere, you're bringing whatever presence of God that you have that manifests in your life. That's what you're bringing with you. And I know that there's a kingdom clash going on here. And I'm feeling the clash, okay? And there was a lot of spiritual warfare at the front end of this. And as I've been walking through this, it's been an interesting journey. But I know you're saying, will you get to what you were talking about? This is it. See, here's the thing. I couldn't see the blessing that was overtaking me, because there was blessing overtaking me, but I didn't see it for probably, and I'd have to say this, when I got that word, about Amos 9:13 being a word for 5780. I thought it was just contained to the year 5780, but it really was something that was going to be rolling out from 5780. Now, I didn't know that at the time, but when I go back and I inquire of the Lord and I see, sometimes when we go back and revisit those words and visions and things that the Lord gave us a year ago or 2 years ago, we see them in a different light now. That doesn't make us wrong. It just means we're human and we didn't see the whole picture, because sometimes these things, they unfold. And as they unfold, we can begin to see the whole picture. It's kind of like back in the day. Now, I'm old enough to remember paper maps that you kept in the car. And they were the ones you got them at the gas station or at the rest stop, and they were folded. And you would unfold them, and it wasn't until they were completely unfolded that, so you'd have something that was about the size of like a business size envelope, okay? So you'd have this envelope that's about that size, about the size of a business envelope, and you'd open it up, and by the time you've opened it up completely, it could be almost the size of the hood on your car. So, just saying. But like poster size, okay? So when it unfolds, you can either look at the little bit that you can see on that one section, but as you unfold it, you get a bigger picture. And until it's completely unfolded and completely opened up, we don't see the whole thing. We don't get the whole picture all at once. Sometimes it does take time for things to unfold. Okay, so having said all that, and I promise I'm getting there. Having said all that, I couldn't see the blessing that 2020 was to me. COVID notwithstanding, there were other things that were going on that had nothing to do with COVID. So here I am sitting over here in Virginia in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do except for what I brought with me. And we won't even go into the lack of internet accessibility here, but if I even go down that path, I'm going to go on a 20-minute rant. So we're not going to go there. It's a very different way of life. But so what happened, I'm trying to get these pieces together and get to the point, because I think it's important for you to hear about the journey, because this has been a journey. It's been like this expedition. It has been this, this has not been a vacation. And that's the difference between a journey and a vacation. I'm not on vacation. I'm on an expedition. I'm on a journey. And the reason I say it that way is because that's what God has put in me for this. And I've been trying to make this a vacation, and it isn't one. And that doesn't mean it hasn't been a blessing. It means the difference between a vacation and an expedition is purpose. On a vacation, your purpose is to relax and have fun and recuperate and all of that and restore and just, you're not there to work. But in an expedition, there's a purpose and there's a goal, and it's a whole different way of, your purpose is very different. Now, I had to learn what my purpose was. I had to get before the Lord and really find out, what is the purpose for this particular journey? And one of the things the Lord said to me, now this was for me personally, during that, I got to a certain point with this. I'm going, God, why am I still here? What's going on? Like I said, I was pulling my hair out because I'm like, we get to June and I'm still here. And I was losing my mind. I mean, it had gotten to a point where I'm like, okay, that's it. Hold on. I need a break. And I'm like, I had come to the point where I'm like, I have to get out of here. She's making me crazy. I cannot do this anymore. I had made a decision. I'm like, okay, the Lord told me, pack as if you're going to be there for a couple of months. That's it. My couple of months are over. You know, my siblings we're going to have to get on the same page with this. I'm going to have a meeting with them, and we're going to have to make a decision on how we're going to take care of her, because this cannot continue to happen. I cannot just move to Virginia and say goodbye to my life and, and whatever, okay, just for the purpose of taking care of her. So I said, okay, I had to take a week, and I did. So I took a week, and I drove back to Illinois, and so I'm on the road. It's a 12-hour drive, so I can't drive 12 hours in a day. So I had to stop halfway. I did. So it's a 2-day trip for me, and I was going to be gone exactly 7 days. So 2 days there, 2 days back, and a couple of days in Illinois. And my purpose was to get everything set in order so that when I got back to Virginia a week later, this issue would be settled with where she's going to go, what we're going to do with her. We're going to have to put things in order. We're going to have to get the house on the market, and there's things we're going to have to do now. So we're going to have to change gears, and so all of this is decided. And I'm like, well, my siblings were not in a position where somebody could just uproot their life and come down here and stay with her. As much as you love her, because we all do, we love her dearly. But none of us were really in a position to do that. So the decisions are made. This is what's going to happen. And my siblings were going to join me in Virginia in July. So about a month later, they would be coming down so that we could get these things in order. We could talk to her about it as a family and let her know this is what's going to happen. There are going to have to be some changes. And it's like a couple of months had gone by. We were being very kind in how we were going to relay this. And we were all going to be there for her and just be able to transition life. And she's going to either have to go into assisted living or come and live with someone. But it's going to have to be in Illinois. So all of those decisions are made. I get in the car. I'm on my way back. I stop in the town of Chillicothe, Ohio for the night, because that's like halfway. And I'm like, I'm so relieved that, this is all settled. I'm coming back to Virginia with purpose, with a newfound energy. I've also had a bit of a break. I can come back into the situation now with new strength. I had spent time with the Lord. I spent time with my friends. I had some life while I was there. I come back. So that night, I'm laying in this wonderful king-size bed in this great hotel room and just rested. I think for the first time in a week, I actually slept. And I get up the next morning and I get on the road, and I'm on the road coming back to Virginia. And I don't know where I was, but it was not long. I couldn't have been on the road for an hour, and the Lord speaks to me and says, Betty, you're staying. That's your plan, but that's not my plan. And I have a plan for you. And my plan is for you to stay. And I'm like, forever? He goes, it won't be forever. But my plan is for you to stay. And he began to unfold that plan for me for the remainder of the 6-hour drive that I had to get back to the Charlottesville area. And over the course of that time, the Lord just unfolded his plan. And, when God does things, he speaks it to your spirit, and your spirit receives it. So he deposits that into your spirit in a way that your spirit receives what the Lord, because my spirit is in agreement with the Holy Spirit. So my spirit, the Holy Spirit is bearing witness to my spirit that this is right and this is good. And so I'm receiving this from the Lord with joy. And so I come back, by the time I got back to Virginia, it wasn't that my mind was changed. My mind was not changed. My spirit was changed. My heart was changed. And it wasn't just, oh, well, now I have this great and wonderful love for her that I didn't have before. No, it's not that. I always did love her, as difficult as she could be. I can be difficult too. We all can on different levels. We are all high maintenance on some level. Whether we like to think that or not, we all come with maintenance. It's human nature, just the way it is. And that's okay, because we have the freedom to be who we are. Nevertheless, so like I said, this wasn't as if, oh my gosh, the Lord just filled my heart with love for her because I didn't have love for her. I did have love for her. And I wanted to do the most loving and kind thing for her. We just were trying to figure out what that was. And the Lord just put it in me. He goes, here's what I want you to do. And here's how I want you to do it. Here's the plan. Now you go do the plan, and I will give you the ability to walk this plan out. And it wasn't easy to walk out, but I can say this. This has been an interesting journey. And ever since I got back, so I got back in July. It was the first or 2nd of July, 2020. So it was only gone, like I said, it was only gone for a week. I get back at the front end of July. My siblings were going to be there. A couple of weeks later, like the last week of July, they were going to be down there. We're supposed to have this family meeting while they're there. And by the time I get back to Virginia, that whole plan has now changed. So when they come down a couple of weeks later, I have to let them know, hey, by the way, we're not going to do that. This is what the Lord said to me. This is now, everything has changed. And I'll be honest with you, my siblings tried to talk me out of it. Because it didn't make sense. In the natural, it didn't make sense. They're like, Betty, you're giving up your life. Why are you doing this? And I'm like, well, I'm not giving up my life. I'm not looking at it that way. I'm following the leading of my God. I'm following the Lord. This is where the Lord wants me. So this is where the blessing is going to be for me. Now, I might not have really let all those pieces fall into place right at the front end of it. It took a while for this to unfold. But I have to say, this past year, since that time when I came back from Illinois and got back here to Virginia, so like I said, that was like July 1st, 2020. Since then, there has been a shift. And the things that began to shift were first in my stepmother. Now, I couldn't have caused things to shift. I couldn't have caused any of that. But one of the things that was dynamically happened is she started opening up to me. And it wasn't just that her guard was down, but her defenses came down. And her heart began to open up in a way that it hadn't before. And she began to realize that I was there for her. I wasn't just there for my dad. See, when I showed up at the front end, it was more about my dad. And she just was a part of the package, or at least that's the way she was taking it. And when the Lord sent me back and he just put this deposit in me, now this wasn't just Betty's here to take care of her. This was about the commissioning of the Lord to care for a widow. And to be there for her. Do you know what it's like to be on the receiving end of someone being commissioned by God to be there for you? No, I'm being serious here, because I don't think we really realize, especially for those people who live alone and who spend their lives alone, and it can be a lonely existence. I mean, I'm single. I've been single most of my life. I was married for 10 years to an alcoholic, and when the marriage ended and I never got involved again, or I should say I never remarried. And, my life was very isolated from certain things. So there were things that were just not available in my life because I was a single person. And it's very different. Being single is very different than being married. And, all she had ever known, for the past 50 years was what it was like to be married. She only knew that piece. And I only knew what it was like to be on my own. I only knew what it was like to not have a man around. She only knew what it was like to have somebody there for her. And here's God's love. God's love is so great for us that he will send someone to minister to us in the area where we have need. That's retinue. I didn't recognize that I was the retinue. I didn't realize that I was the one. I mean, not in those terms, okay? I didn't realize that at the front end. Yes, I was sent here to do a service. But more than that, I was sent here as a vessel of God's love. To just simply be here and to be the container of God's love every day. And there's days when that was a challenge. There were days when it was like, oh my God, I just don't want to be here anymore. Can we move on already? But when I look back now over this past year, what the deposit that God has put in me, the blessing that has come to me as a result of having been here, it isn't just about the relationship with her. My relationship with her is now in a place it's never been in the whole of my life. I am 62 years old this year, and she has been in my life since I was 9. Okay? Her and my dad were married when I turned 9 years old. So really, she's been in my life, and they were going out for about a year before that. So since I was 8 years old, this woman has been in my life. And this is the first time in all those years that I could say her and I have a very close relationship. And that is so meaningful for me. That is a blessing. When she finally passes on, I will have the treasure of this past year with her. I will have the gift of being able to have the opportunity to work through past differences, to work through misunderstandings, and to work through the difficulties and the hardships, and to really get to a place where there is some sense of relationship, where there's kindness, and there's something good in there, and there's love expressed back and forth, where there's affection and appreciation and And none of those things were really there before, not to this degree. So the gift that I was given through this time that I never would have gained any other way is the fact that I've been here. And I've been here for a year. And, how did I pack for the journey? What equipment did I bring? I brought the equipment I thought I would need. And it turns out, I needed everything I brought with me. And then some. And I had to have my friends ship a few things to me since then. And I've had to collect a few things along the way. But the point is this. Just because we can't see the blessing of what something is doesn't mean it hasn't been. So I'm going to challenge us all to kind of look at this past year and ask the Lord to show us, God, would you unfold and open our understanding, open our eyes to see, give us ears to hear and eyes to see the blessing that has been contained in the difficult circumstances that you've put us in over the course of this past year. And I just want to share with you, there is something, so I want to end with this. The reason I'm sharing this isn't because of just talking about what has been over this past year. It's where things are going. Now, I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know what changes might be coming in the next few days or the next few months. But what I do know is this: there is something that is going to be changing. There are changes coming. We not only are entering into something new, but there's an equipping that's going on right now. And that's the piece that I'm really hearing the Lord say, is that we've had some shifts and changes, but now there's an equipping that's taking place. There's a spiritual equipping. There's a natural equipping. There's a physical equipping. There are things that are happening where God is coming in and He's bringing resources and equipment in to the lives of His people. He is bringing things in order to equip us for going forward into whatever this new journey has to offer. There is an expedition ahead of us. There is something new that's going to be embarking very, very soon. I believe for a lot of people, I don't know that this is for everyone, but I do believe that there are those that God is right now, He is equipping you, He is stockpiling you for what you're going to need. And there's a change of equipment right now. So it's the things that serviced you in the last season are going to be, there are some of those things that aren't going to be suitable for what you're going to need for going forward. And, it's kind of like, I'll, like I said, I'll end with this, but I have this old Windows 7 laptop that I've been hanging on to since 2010, 2011, I think, when I got it. And it has serviced me well. There's a very particular program that I use on it. It only runs on that machine. And I have an iMac, so the program doesn't transfer over, and it doesn't run on Windows 10. It only runs on, if I want to go to Windows 10, I have to upgrade. And it's just been this, what on earth do I do? And I've been striving over this for the last few weeks. But finally, yesterday, I got clarity. And the Lord said, Betty, you need to change out that equipment. That can't go forward with you, but you need what you need in order to go forward. And I want to equip you with the actual things you need. So here's what you're going to have to do. So He showed me, you're going to have to do a certain thing. And it was not what I expected. It really was not what I expected. It was totally different because I made a shift from Windows to Mac 10 years ago now. I think. I don't remember exactly when I bought my Mac, but no, not however long ago it was. And when I made the shift to the Mac, I had been running with both Mac and my old Windows 7 laptop with the intention of just simply figuring out something new to do that I could do on my Mac. Well, now I've had the Mac long enough that I'm going to have to upgrade. I'm going to have to do something because now that's running sluggishly, and there's all sorts of things that are now going on where it's like I'm going to have to bite the bullet here somewhere, and I only want one machine, so let's just go forward with whatever. And I'm fully expecting that to be a new Mac. And the more I pushed through and the more I was trying to work that out and figure out exactly what I needed, the more I knew this isn't the direction I'm supposed to go in. And there's and I forget exactly where it's at. I think it's in Ecclesiastes somewhere where it says we make our plans, but the Lord directs our steps. And here's my plan. I'm trying to trudge forward with this plan, and it's not working. I mean, I couldn't make that work. And then finally, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And so I took a step back. I really went to the Lord with it. And all of a sudden, by the end of the day, I had clarity. And everything just shifted. And then I knew what I needed to do. I have so much peace, but the Lord is taking me back to Windows. And I'm like, it was the last thing in the world I expected to have happen, okay? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect this. And, and it's not that big of a deal, okay? I mean, it really isn't whether you have a Mac or you have a Windows, that's not the point. The point is, I was expecting to have to make certain changes with my equipment, but it wasn't the changes that I needed to make was not what I expected. And so I make this whole change, I pull the trigger on all this stuff just yesterday, and afterward the Lord says to me, goes, Betty, now you're going to have the equipment you need for going forward. And I knew this was a part of the equipment because he's been equipping me with other things to do the work that I do, to do the things that I need to do. He has been equipping me, okay? So I am getting equipped. That's just one piece. I share the thing about the computer because it's an easy thing for us to identify. It's something that's easily translatable. But it's just a picture because there are things that we've been using, like my Windows 7 laptop. There's things we've been using that have serviced us well through this past journey that aren't going to service us because they're outdated and they can't be updated. They have to be gotten rid of and replaced. So some of the equipment, and some of that is spiritual equipment. Some of that is our emotional equipment. Some of the things is if we have always leaned on our anger and our grief and our self-pity or whatever that happens to be, whatever our emotional makeup is, if there are things that have been servicing us, whether we realize it or not, we think this thing may have been a friend to us, but it really isn't. Unforgiveness. Sometimes we hold on to things and it serviced us, or maybe we had to be stalwart in a certain area of our lives, and we don't have to be that anymore. So there's certain things that internally there are changes, and God is going to be equipping us differently than He has in the past. Because the journey, the expedition that we're getting ready to go on, those things that serviced us in the past aren't going to service us in this new place God is taking us. So Father, right now, I thank you for this time. I thank you for all the love and all of your patience and all of your goodness. I thank you, Lord God, that you are God and that there is no one like you. And I lift up to you every single person who's hearing this broadcast. And I just say, Lord, would you come with a blessing? Would you come and open up our eyes, give us eyes to see and ears to hear where you are, what you're doing in our lives, give understanding, and cause us to see how you're equipping us in this hour so that we can go forward into what you have for us in the days and months and years to come. Thank you. Thank you for your blessing. Thank you for your faithfulness and your consistency. In Jesus' name, amen. So thank you for hanging in there with me. I know this is a bit of a long one. And I just want to say the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. This has been Betty with Beyond the Dalit. Shalom.